The United Nations dishing up a $76 trillion plan. Yes, $76 trillion for countries to feed the world over the next 40 years, all while going green. Now, it ain't easy being green, and it ain't cheap. Here's the math. You could wrap 76 trillion $1 bills around the earth nearly 300,000 times. That's $76 trillion. Chris Horner is sick to his stomach over this one. Chris, feeding the world is an admirable goal, but you don't feel this is the right way to go about it, do you?
No, wealth creation, not wealth redistribution, is the way to alleviating poverty, hunger, and the ills that this report focuses on. And of all the bodies in the world you would task with the charge of bettering the world, the UN would be pretty far down the list. It would be like putting, I don't know, Libya on a human rights panel, which is so absurd you only hear such things at the UN. But by the way, this is the prelude to something that we'll all be hearing a lot about in the spring. There's a conference, there's a treaty confab at which President Obama will go to in Rio, in which he will sign a treaty grounded in these ramblings called the UN Convention on Sustainable Development 2012. So they've started the drumbeat, and this redistributionist call, which is what they're all about, is the first shot.
And feeding the world is not cheap. We all know that. It isn't going to be cheap. It's going to cost money to do it. But to do it in a way that makes it green as well makes it that much more expensive, does it not?
Well, look, we've seen when these people turn their gaze to green energy, it led to not only energy price spikes, but food price spikes and food shortages, food riots around the world, including in faraway Mexico. Now they're going to focus their gaze laser-like on actually addressing food. Heaven only knows what's going to happen. It will be a lot of unforeseen, yet entirely foreseeable, predictable consequences. You have to remember something. The issue's not the issue to these people. There's a guy who's the economist in charge of this whole economic aspect of the UN's climate agenda named Otto Edenhofer. Now, I'm about to quote him, but his principal lead author, co-author, is an economist from Cuba, just in case you wonder where they turn to for economic miracles. And this guy, Otto Edenhofer, volunteered late last year that one has to free oneself from the notion that international climate policy is about the environment. No, he said, it's about redistributing de facto the world's wealth. That's always been the objective. They admit it time and time again. It's not criminal to point this out. It's criminal not to focus on it because, again, we've got a treaty the U.S. is going to sign next year premised in this paper.
You know, Chris, when the UN calls for governments to invest nearly $2 trillion a year, are they really calling on the United States to invest nearly $2 trillion a year?
Right. They say, oh, don't worry, that's a global figure. Oh, okay, so Chad and Burkina Faso are going to pitch in. Well, no, this is a redistribution number. So what they say is slice that in half. You can do what you want with the other 38, but this 38 trillion needs to go to these countries from the rich to the poor. And among the rich, as they see it, by the way, South Korea is still a developing country, a recipient. China, India, Mexico, Brazil, South Korea, Indonesia, a lot of very prosperous countries are called developing countries for these purposes. They will be receiving wealth transfers under the scheme, you're right, from a very few rich countries, particularly us.
Yeah, China, the second largest economy in the world. Chris, thank you so much. Nice chatting with you.
Thank you.
All right, he's a Mexican national.